All right, let's get started. Simone, I am very happy that you're taking the time to kind of present your team's story of moving to ShapeUp, or kind of adopting ShapeUp in part with us. And I know it's been quite a journey for you from like speaking with you over the past 4 weeks. And I also know that your team was really, really conscious, at least from what you were telling me, in what parts you adopted, what parts you kept from other frameworks. And so kind of it seems like you've taken all the bits from all the right places that work for your team. And I think it'll be a really interesting story for everybody to hear the reasoning behind which parts you did or did not adopt. Just to contrast that with our team, for example, for us, when we tried adopting ShapeUp, we went in kind of all in, and we had this ideal ShapeUp kind of in mind, and it was good to see the contrast in some places, but on other things we felt pretty much on our noses. So yeah, I'm excited to hear your story. I just want to let everybody know that this your talk will be kind of split into 2 parts, so we can get questions in easier. The Q&A will be done through Slido. Let me just share my screen real quick. So you guys see this. I don't know if anybody uses QR readers these days, but you can also do this on your phone. So you have the presentation kind of on your laptop, computer, and then the Q&A on your phone. You can submit questions. You can upvote questions. So when we do get to the Q&A, Simone will have kind of a list of top questions. And then, yeah, we can go through them. So that's how I imagine it to work. Let's see. First time I'm trying this, so it's kind of an experiment. But with this, I will hand over to you.
Thank you very much. Let me share my screen. Let's see how this works. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah.
Cool. So as David said, my name is Simone Sciarrati. I am an engineering team lead at a company called Meltwater. And the talk will be split in 2 parts. One is we'll talk about the journey that took us to the last experiment that we ran. And it's gone through trial and errors, what worked, what didn't work, what was the pain that we felt, why, and how we tried to tackle that pain. Then we will stop, and there will be time for questions. And in the second part, I will talk about our most recent experiment. We only started end of 2019, and which is we took bits from OKRs, ShapeUp, Inspired, and the core protocol. So just a brief introduction to Meltwater. Meltwater is a media intelligence platform that provides insights to help companies make better decisions. In practice, what we do is that we analyze, collect, and store the vast amount of content from various sources, editorial, social, and we help companies understand the data that is on the internet and make better decisions. For example, measuring the impact of their PR campaigns, marketing campaigns, and so on. That said, within Meltwater, what we are is a team that is part of something that we call the foundation mission. And this mission job is to provide tools and products for the other development teams. So we are, you can call it a platform team. What we provide is something like a logging platform. So we collect and store logs for all the applications that all the teams deployed. We have a place for deployment for those applications. We have a place for metrics and so on, CI/CD. You get the picture, I think. And this means also that we have a superpower because we are super close to our customers. They're just right there at the next desk. But When we started, we didn't know about that. So we started in 2016, and the way we started was as an offspring of the technical operation team. And we didn't have a product owner, and we didn't have an agile coach. This was a moment where Meltwater went through a transformation from development, organization, and technical operation, and we moved all into fully autonomous teams. So right now, there is no technical operations. There is just autonomous teams that are fully responsible for what they develop and manage their product. At this point, because of how we were a bit born, we had a working culture that was very reactive. We were using Kanban before because that's basically what you do with operations. There's very little planning. There's screaming loud based prioritization. And we didn't have really a product. We didn't talk in terms of product. This is the tech we're running. So our focus was very much on the technical stuff, not the product and the customer. And we didn't have a good process for prioritizing our stories and no time boundaries. So we had lots of stuff that would go in the work in progress. Things would go on forever because if the focus is tech, you might actually focus, you can always make it a bit better. You never see when is the end of this work. And as a result of all of this, after a year of running this way, we felt that we weren't able to put Kanban to work for us. It didn't work for us. We were not able to use it the way probably that it was supposed to be used. And we totally lacked the feeling of accomplishment. Stuff was going on forever. We never get to the end of anything. Even when you do, it just takes too long. And also, as I said, the customers were there, but we had no idea what they wanted because we didn't have a process to go out and ask them. So as a result, a lot of the decisions that we made for our products were decisions we made for our users without actually a lot of interaction with that. So since it wasn't working, let's try to tackle the problem with time and work boundaries. So we decided that what we really were craving for is just boundaries. We want to have a set amount of time in which we're going to do this amount of work so that when we get at the end of it, we can say it's finished and we regain that gratification. We've done something, yay, every 2 weeks. At the same time, we thought that by limiting the time to 2 weeks and defining what we're going to do was going to be a time that we could focus entirely on those objectives, mini objectives that we had in those 2 weeks. This is a time when we also get, which we're joined by a product owner and an agile coach, and they start contributing enormously to our growth as a team, both in terms of process and improving the process and in transforming us into a product team. So we start doing all the things that you do with Scrum. So we finally have a product. We define what our product are, and therefore we have a roadmap. We have the planning and grooming meetings. We have sprint reviews. Since we are an internal team and our customers are just our internal development teams, these reviews were actually public. So we start reaching out even just in our sprint reviews to tell our customers, this is what we've done. You can use it now. And also we start trying to this continuous process of improving. So having always a retro every 2 weeks, see what isn't working. And we had basically a swim lane in Jira, because that's what we use, where we had a continuous improvement swim lane. And we would always have 1 or 2 experiments that we would try for a medium to long term to validate if we can improve our processes in some way. And obviously, we start finally doing customer discovery. We have a PO, so we can go out and ask people and teams what they actually do. This is very good theory. And I collected this from the retros that we had in this period. And you don't need to read all of this, but it's post-its that I copy pasted here. And basically what this means is that we still, even with all this theory and with the effort and the reasoning, we still find it extremely difficult to do things like, for example, tackle technical debt. We tried experiments. We tried, for example, we have 1 week on call turns. So we tried to do, after 1 week of on call, we tackle the next week. We don't do any feature work. We do tech debt. That didn't work that well. It worked initially, it helped us, but then after a while, feature work just prevails, and you start feeling guilty if you don't work on that. We also tried an experiment where we said, okay, but the team can meet before the grooming. We check all the things that we are labeled with tech debt, and we bring one thing to the sprint. So we know at least one thing is definitely going to get into there. But unfortunately, tech debt label becomes a synonym for low priority work. And that also kind of didn't work for us, at least. We have lots of ceremonies, lots of meetings. And because we are distributed, it's not always possible to have meetings at the beginning of the day or at the end of the day or close to lunch or try to bin pack them. So because of reasons, they're a bit in the middle of a week, and focusing really becomes difficult. And we also find that grooming isn't really providing a lot of value. We go into a lot of details, nitpicking of words, but in the end, it's not really much the value that it actually provides to the team. I still feel that we don't have a good process to be always in sync with product. Just continuously, somehow we don't have this communication going. We don't have a good process. We still haven't implemented it, find a good way to actually get this going. And again, because of all the meetings and interruptions, and we cannot tackle tech debt when we have incidents, it's really hard to get into the zone and do continuous work. In 2019, mainly as a research initiative from RPO, we get introduced to the OKRs, which aligns very nicely in a way to our goals, because it basically says that we should be more empowered and enabled to solve a problem. So we would focus on the outcome and not on the output. So the goal that you have rather than the feature to build. And we would have long-term objectives that are quantifiable. And then the team is, once they get the objective and the problem to solve that is quantifiable, the team can come up with the best way of having what are the things that we need to do to get to the objective that we want to achieve. So that felt very empowering. But the first iteration didn't work really great. We still got to discussing objectives where some objectives were a bit unexpected. And there was also a problem that because of the nature of the work we do, stuff that is normally business as usual and therefore shouldn't go in the OKRs because it's business as usual. It's not really business as usual for us. So a software upgrade is a business as usual, but it's not business as usual when you have 500 instances of a big cluster that runs production workload. So that becomes a big chunk of work that requires a lot of testing and procedure, and having that invisible makes it also really hard to reason on the other objectives, because you cannot take into consideration the amount of time that this work business as usual is gonna actually take. And it's honestly a bit frustrating because that's a huge part of our job. So as a result of this, we didn't really get to an agreement of the objectives until mid of Q3 in 2019. So far, this is what the initial part of it. So before I get into what we're trying now, if there is questions, I can take it. I can stop share.
And then I'll jump into sharing now. And yeah, please put in all your questions via Slido. and I'll see if we have any in there yet. All right, can you see this as well, Simone?
Yes.
All right, okay. Okay, so yeah, is there anyone you want to start with?
Okay, so I'll start from the top down. So how did we get a PO and an agile coach? We identified with our line managers and responsible for the entire mission that we needed one, that we needed to start thinking in terms of products, and we definitely needed an agile coach in terms of to improve on the process, because there was a lot of will and a lot of experiments and a lot of things we wanted to try, but you're not equipped if that's not your job. Basically, you might not do the right things. I would say that the morale of the team after jumping from multiple different approaches is, it depends, because I think the morale was lower when we were not doing anything about it. So I think it was definitely a team decision to go from one to change, because we reasoned about why do we want to change? This is the problem. Like from Kanban to Scrum, we really felt, and we had some people that came from more of a Kanban background, and they knew that this could work. And that was not the point. It can work. The point was more, it is not working for us. We're unable to make it work. So we reasoned about it, and deciding to go and try something else was an opportunity. I mean, it wasn't a bad thing.
Let me just suggest real quick that if you asked this question, and this is towards the audience, if you ask this question and you feel like you have a follow-up question for Simone, just unmute yourself, I'd say, and then ask, and feel free to discuss a bit, if that's okay for you, Simone.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
So were there similar roles, PO, AC, already in the company for other teams? Yes, there's a lot of, I would say that the fact that we did not have one is because of how we were born as a team. So technical operations didn't have it. And then when we sort of created this new team that was a mix, it wasn't just technical operation people, but we just didn't think about it. It just wasn't part of the culture. So we did not do that. And I think it's also a process of understanding that you're now a product team. And even if you know it inside, sometimes you just don't have the words to say it. You don't know what is that you know what is the feeling that you have and what you would get, what you would want to get, but you don't know how to express it. So there is generally all the development teams, we have POs and agile coaches, yes. So did we hire externally for those roles? Both, or was someone from within? So we had PO and an agile coach from internally, and then at some point we also hired a PO for externally. So both, that we had an opportunity when we started with the first PO. There was a developer actually that turned into PO, and that actually presented a lot of good opportunities, because it was basically a customer becoming our PO. So that was really an interesting and a good opportunity for us. But then we also hired a PO from outside the organization. So you did not miss it. I did not say the team size and distribution of roles. Thank you for reminding me that. So we are basically 5 engineers, 1 agile coach, and 1 PO. And we are distributed between Sweden and Hungary. This is my team. The big mission has another team that is about the same size and is in the US. But this is more like the experience of my team that I'm talking about. Were the OKRs adopted by everyone in the company? No, just by us at this point. So this is, you'll see it afterwards. There isn't a huge push to OKRs, but in a way, our team is a bit has had the liberty to do that. I don't think any other team would get any opposition to that, but as a fact, I think it's only us, maybe one other team, I don't know, that has adopted that. We still track the work, so still the product vision of the company is all visualized in the same place. Did you maintain the same Scrum style of working alongside having the OKRs? Initially, yes, but so the introduction of OKRs came very close to when we actually changed this. So maybe it might have helped with Scrum, but I think there is other things that we were feeling and other needs that Scrum was not fulfilling. I think OKRs was, I believe that was just something that sounded really good in practice. I mean, it was that really resonated with our PO, and then it resonated with us. So I don't think that it was introduced as something to do with Scrum. It was just because it was a good tool.
All right. If there's no more questions right now, I would want to ask one.
Yes.
Because like before when we were talking, you told me about how Marty Cagan's book inspired, kind of also kicked off this drive for product discovery for you. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Was that already at this time? And how did that book or those ideas find their way into your team?
It's about to come, but the OKR basically came at the same time that we were actually reading about those, about Inspired. I think we.
If it's in your next section, we can also switch to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we can go there, but yeah, it was about the same time basically, and it's sort of everything came together. But I'll show you. I'm just gonna,
all right. Then I'm gonna let you, take it away from here.
Thank you. So let's see. Perfect. So meanwhile, the OKRs were introduced. Some of us in the team, we came across the book Shape Up from Basecamp. And I have to say that probably the most influential quote is that one, that we Shape Up just shaped their own way of doing things over 15 years of trial and error. And as said, you mentioned, we also, I can't remember exactly why, what was I think maybe a blog post about empowered product teams, but basically triggered some of us to read the book or to listen to the audiobook. And the main concept here is we really liked about the empowered product team, the fact that you're measured by outcomes and you're empowered to actually find the way to get to those outcomes. So it empowers the team and it makes the team a whole in terms of individuals. There is engineering, there is testers, QA, and product. There is agile coaches. These are all different specialties in the same team. So it feels like the concept of having this on the same level, it made a lot of sense to us. It's just different aspects and different abilities of people, different skills that you bring to the table, but it's the same team. So we got all this information, and the way we read it, which might be different from how you read it, but we basically took, okay, we need to find our own way. We can find our own way. It's totally fine to not just embrace a framework and just go and find what works for us. And we want to make the boundaries disappear. The processes that we have now don't are not allowing us to do that. We still feel that the disconnection, and we need to have something that makes inevitable the fact that we actually can connect. And also, this is a quote, missionaries, not mercenaries. It's a quote from Inspired. And we want to have a team of people that really care. They care about the product, they care about the customers. And if we want to do that, we need to involve them. We need to make them part of the product part. So we need to make them part. It's very important that they get firsthand feedback from the customers, because at that point you can build empathy, you can understand the problem. It makes it a lot easier, and it makes you much more involved in caring for that. So we started to define how we're going to do this. So everyone in the team has a clear objectives. So if it's a development team, we have features. If we have, we also have product. So the product owner has also objectives, and they are an OKR, just like any other one. Of course, our objectives are aligned to the company's one. So we have a global directive for the company, and as an internal team, we either have to contribute directly to that, or we can contribute to other teams contributing to that, like in an indirect way. But in some way, we have to align with what the company's objectives are. The product has objectives, and they're decided with the team. So we decide together what is the thing that product needs to work on the next iteration. And also we agreed that maintenance, if it's large enough, if it takes enough time, this is an objective, because maintaining what we do at a level that it's satisfactory for the customer is an objective. And what we do technically will also take these objectives, and we create epics in Jira, and then we stop there. That's all we create in Jira. And we want to increase the collaboration and visibility of what the work that everyone is doing in the team. So we started participating as engineers to customer discoveries. We did it occasionally also before, but now it happens more often. It's just to add to this, we also now have a dedicated PO, so that makes it easier. So that's an important part of it. And we track this progress. So if we defined an objective for product, it goes in on the board. It becomes an epic. We discuss it every morning as stand up. And rather than tasking the product owner to generate a roadmap, we task for answering questions. So we generate as a team the questions that we want to get answers for, and we want to go out and ask either the customers or do research, and that's what we bring as product at the end of during the iteration. This means the fact that we share all of this in the board openly, and we track every day and we discuss, it makes it very clear. The information is available to everyone. If you want to participate in a customer discovery session, you can. So the updates and the communication flows in all directions. Basically, everyone knows at what point we are, what information we collected, where is the information collected. So what is the progress on all of the objectives. So we really liked the 6 weeks plus 2 weeks shape up cycle. It really felt like we can have a long enough period of time where we can focus on something meaningful, but also at the same time as not too long that we just go and do random stuff or we scope creep. It's not been without resistance, because it's a change, just like OKRs. And if we work in 6 weeks plus 2 weeks, it's not really a quarter. So how do you align that to the quarterly objectives that the rest of the company has? Theoretically, it's a problem. Practically, we haven't seen that problem. Also, we are an internal team. It might be different. We also believe that this provides us with a shorter product cycle and feedback cycle, which we think it's valuable. We talk a lot about shorter feedback cycles for development, and we think that this is the same. It's valuable also for product. When we're trying to plan for a quarter that's 3 months, it's very unlikely that the plan that you make is gonna stick for 3 months. I don't know your company, but I think in a lot of cases things change. So 6 weeks gives us an opportunity to change as well. We take the objectives and we map it to projects in shape-up terms, and we create epics, as I said, and then we have a part of the team that takes and runs with it. And just like it says in shape-up, the time is fixed. We have 6 weeks, and to avoid getting into scope creep, we reevaluate the status and what we're doing every 2 weeks. We have a meeting that is called the OKR check-in, which takes 15 minutes, but it's a good place to tell us, to check what is the progress. Should we descope something? Is what you're doing really aligned with the key result that you wanted to obtain? And as you said, David, we kept stand-up, and there is a couple of reasons for that. We embraced also the core protocol, not really entirely in the precise way that is clarified, but in the core protocol, basically, every morning the first round, you talk about your status, like you can say, I'm happy, I think I'm sad, or things like that. And you just go around and everyone says what is their state of mind, and it helps sync the team mood. And so you can understand, okay, that person was really sad today or angry. The way I approach him when I'm going to ask this thing, I'm gonna do it this way. And it also helps us build empathy with each other and care about each other, which in the end builds a better team, and then we care more about what we do. Yes, so what we don't do is that we don't have a hard rule as in shape-up, the circuit breaker. We don't have a hard rule or at least we never put it on paper that this is the rule. We never do this, but in reality, we haven't done that. It might have happened that things that we descoped then turned up in the next iteration, but we haven't carried over work from one iteration to the other. So far, it's still an experiment. We also wanted to reduce meetings, as said. And so what we do is that, as I said, we agree the objectives, but we don't actually go and groom the details of how we get there. Once we have the objective and we have the key results, that's enough to create a Jira epic and give it to someone. And we trust that someone to actually go with it and do what the key objectives, the key results say that they should do. We are only 5 engineers. So we split into teams, generally into pods, we call it. And each of these pod gets the project. And they get the epic and they track work, creating tickets as they need. So, okay, next 3 things that we're gonna do are these 3 things. We write stories for that. And that's because we found by experience that whenever we try to groom and we write all the 25 stories upfront, then we have to regroom it after 3 days, and then we have to regroom it, and then we have to regroom it. So we spend a lot of time regrooming things that we tried to guess in advance, and it just didn't work for us. So the morning process with stand-up also helps us to reach out for help to, different people at different backgrounds, and so you can go reach out and say, I need help with this thing, or what I really want to involve you guys in this decision. And also it's a good place for people to ask, are you really sure you have to do that story? Because that doesn't look that on the path to the key result here. It feels to me like you're going some sideways. And with this, the product owner is constantly in the loop because we keep sharing every morning, and the team is constantly in the loop. And then we also use the cooldown period. And anything goes here. So if you want to learn something, if you want to experiment with this technology, if you're really annoyed by that bug and you want to fix it, you go for it. But what we do is that we plan it. Not we plan it, but we more than planning it, we pitch it before we actually start it. And that creates a good opportunity for recruiting someone to work on the project that you really want to do in those 2 weeks. And 2 weeks is enough time. It's enough time to tackle something that is not a trivial task. So I actually today is the last day of our 2 weeks cool down. And I just talked to one of my colleagues that created a wonderful visualization that we didn't have, and we already sent out the communication to our users. So it's great things happen in this period. And it's also because in this period, you know that there's no feature work. You have no guilt. If I want to learn Rust, I can do that and not feel that I'm not contributing to the feature that the team is building. I don't have a guilt feeling that. So it really, this time, I can do these things without having any bad feeling, and I can really focus on it. Not everyone has the same success, but we're learning and we're trying to make it as successful as possible. So roughly, this is kind of the timeline. We have at the start, we have the objectives are clear, the key results are clear. We have defined which pods, which people are in which pod. We give us silly names, and then we start. And during this period, all this period, we have the same happens for the product work. So we know we give updates on our project, PO gives updates and involves us for the product projects. And every 2 weeks, we have a check-in. Where are we? Is this, how does this look? Is it like green, orange, or red? Are we gonna do it or not? Should we take something out to actually get there? Should we scrap this thing because we're never gonna get there because this other thing happened? We try to, we keep it short. It's generally like 15, 30 minutes max when we really have to take something out to define something, but otherwise it's a painless meeting. Another thing that we kept from Scrum is retro, because this is still a relatively new experiment, but also because we really need a place to identify what is blocking us. It might not be our process, it might be that something in team relationship or cross-team relationships, or something that happened at the company level. We don't know, but stuff happens in life, like personal situations at home. That can also happen. And we want to keep a check on the team health so that everyone can actually contribute the best they can and be happy. And when we get closer to the end of the 6 weeks, hopefully we have gathered enough information from the product discovery or research that we're able to start a discussion about what are we doing next. We have the longer term company objectives. So this is what we're gonna do on that line for the next 6 weeks. And at this point, around the 4th week, we have a discussion, and this is also a good place for people to come with emerging ideas. This is a new thing that I thought we should probably do. And everything goes, it's discussed, but generally this is also a kind of a painless process, because everyone knows what the customer discovery has been throughout those 4 weeks. So nothing comes new. And also because we participated in it, we got the information firsthand, and we have all the data available. And when we get even closer, we formalize it as a planning. So, okay, this is what we're doing. And in between, if we need to talk more about something, if we need to involve 2 people, 10 people, well, not 10, but all the team, we do it, but that's on a need basis. And as I said, we also try to discuss what we're gonna do on the cooldown period. And it's more than just so that everyone knows, okay, this is the project I'm working, and we tend to get excited about each other's project and pair to try to get there. What have I done? So in general, sum it up, there's a lot of very good content all over the place, but they're just tools and they work for someone in some specific situation. What really helped us by reading all of this literature is that it gave us words. It gave us a way to express what we wanted. We knew what we wanted, but it was very difficult to express it in a way that was effective, to bring up the topic in a way that was convincing. And also when you see it all together on paper, it makes a lot of sense. And you can take the stuff that makes the most sense to you. Also gave us confidence because, okay, we're not asking for something or willing for something strange. This is I can see that other teams and other people are doing this in these ways. So if anything, this is just what worked for us. Read everything and build up your own experiment. And thank you for listening.
Awesome, thank you. I've been monitoring Slido on the side a bit, and there's quite a queue of questions to get to. So let's just jump in. And again, if like your question's being answered and you want to follow up, just unmute yourself. We're only 30 people right now, so I think this is a small enough group to also get into some back and forth. All right, I'm going to share now, and yeah. Now everybody should be seeing the questions. So up here, there's like top ranked ones. I'm just gonna mark this one for you to get started, Simone.
So I actually had to go and reread Shape Up today very quickly because I was like, what is actually that? What really we got inspired by? And there's a lot of parallels with what we're doing actually. So we basically do have this dual track. If you think that the PO discovery and trying to find answers to the questions we have is the shaping line, and that's what we think about it. But we tend to have a wider participation. So we involve people in discovery if they want to. I have personally a meeting every week with our PO, and we discuss things, but it's not to create what we want to present as this is the roadmap, this is the ideas that we want to do. It's more to organize the data and see how we can involve the team. So I think somehow we have the dual track, but we consolidate that at the end and we involve the rest of the team for how to actually shape the new thing that we want to build. I'm not sure if that answers your question. If not, try again. So the shaping work, I think it's similar, but it is not a small group of people. We all do it together. We're too small. I mean, it would be just me and the PO, and I don't think that would be fair. Actually, what I think is that there's a huge amount of contribution. There's a lot of value when we do this. The point is that it cannot just be just anything. We try to organize it because we decide as a team what are the things that we want to find out, and then once we found out what we wanted to find out, we decide what is the things that we should do then. And at that point, we had the data. So it's easier to have the conversation when you've done the pre-work to answer those questions and gather the data. Then it generally doesn't really take us a lot of time. All of the ideas make sense. I think in practice, the PO generates an initial list and he just puts it there as, this is the things that we found out, but this is not the proposed roadmap. This is something that I am, some point. So we start and discuss and bring your own ideas if you have to, if you have one.
Do you guys actually write a pitch though? Thank you for answering the question. Just curious if you actually
No problem.
documents.
No, we don't do that. But we have a discussion on what is on what makes sense. I think it's I think at this point, considering how long, how much it actually takes us, writing a pitch would be a lot more work and a lot more time than actually the value that we would get out of it.
Okay, thanks.
How did engineers react to the change that things are not as fully spec'd out? I think it was really good. We struggled a lot with having to define all the minimal details of the stories. It's also because a lot of time, the work that we were doing, you get into the situation where you have to explain why this or that. And it's difficult, and maybe it's the kind of team, the kind of people that we have. Again, it's our experience, but I think as long as we can agree and we discuss the key results, we know more or less how it's going to look like. But we also know that it's useless to try to define all of that, because we tried it for 4 years, and then inevitably after the first 2 days, you have to scrap half of the tickets that you wrote, and it took you like 1.5 hours to groom, because what you found out is different from what you thought it would be. And this might be the way we were doing. Maybe we were doing it wrong. I'm not saying that this is not a process that can work, but it didn't work for us. And the reaction for the engineers is we're really happy. We feel free. We feel empowered that we know where we want to go, but we're not told how. As in, if that makes sense. We're more free and creative. We can be more free and creative to actually get to the key result, as long as key result and objectives are well defined, because otherwise it's too wide. How do you balance product work with engineers' time in discovering? Do you feel that it slows down deep development momentum? No, I think it's not really a lot of time. We have, so for example, I'll give you an example for one of our products, the logging. We decided as a product objective was to, as a team objective, it was that we wanted to have a defined roadmap, understand what was the next steps that we wanted to do. And as a key result, we said we need to interview at least 10 teams to understand. And we also structured the interview. It wasn't just a generic. In this case, we also do open just discovery, but in this case, we had specific questions that we wanted answered. So we defined the questions that we wanted to ask in order to answer the question that we really wanted to know, because we didn't want to just ask yes or no, because then you're already giving the answer. And then we had, it was like a spreadsheet. This is the question we're going to ask, because this is what we want to discover. And then we had, obviously, the responses from all the teams. And a few times engineers joined one or the other team, and it's just one engineer, maybe 1 hour. But it was really interesting. The reward of hearing firsthand the feedback of the customer, I was in a meeting yesterday, it's really addictive, because, for example, and also it's also very practically good, because, for example, we had an idea that we wanted to consolidate our environments into one. And we really thought it was a great idea. We really thought that everyone wanted this. We went into customer discovery and they told us, no, please don't touch that. We really like it the way it is. Actually, if you do that, it's going to be a problem. And when we got, so if I compare this to someone coming with a roadmap that says, we're not going to do that without being part of that, I would really think that that's a good idea. So now I've been part of that. I don't have questions. Of course, I heard from the customer that they said, don't do this. So there is no, the value of not having to discuss these things because you actually heard it firsthand is immense. So short answer, no, it doesn't slow down development. It's not too much. How do you deal with outside interruptions or to your objectives or roadmap? For example, a newly emerging initiative. So we try to be very, so there's two cases. In one case, there is something that, some bigger company thing that we cannot not do, that we're explicitly asked to do. And in other cases, it's a strong suggestion to do this or that. But in any case, we try to not diverge from what we're doing. And if anything, we can start an initiative to discover what actually we need to do to achieve what we're asked to do. Because it's very, sometimes you get do this feature, but actually what we hear is solve this problem. So before we go in and do the feature, we decide to allocate time to discover what actually is that the customer wants to solve what we're asked to do. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but we try not to delay, but to gather information. We do that working. We tend to start it as soon as we can, but we don't start the feature. We start the discovery. That's the most important part. So we know exactly what we're going to build. Not all of this works perfectly, but we try to do this. How does management feel about Cooldown? Do they see the value as you do, or there is a pressure to make it shorter? So in the company as a whole, we have a set target of time to dedicate to technical debt. So this time, if we organize it this way, it falls into this percentage of time. So in general, no, but again, we're a tooling team, and internal team, it might not be the same for all other teams, but there is actually clear directive for the company, from the company, of the amount of time that we should spend on fixing technical debt. And rather than doing like here and there, we try to just put it in that place so we can see this is the percentage of time that we're doing it. So how has the role of PO changed since the adaptation of ShapeUp as opposed to Scrum and Kanban? So I think the PO has more time to do what product is about, to discover things about product, rather than micromanaging or spending time in grooming or discussing the technical details of this and that. I think it's much more involved. I don't know if she's here, but is much happier, I would say, in general. Feels much more involved in the team. We are all a team. We're really like a group together now. We really do go all in the same direction. I think there is less caring about the backlog and the tickets. Where is this ticket? Where is that ticket? And more time to do discovery, generally. I hope this answers your question. Do you still maintain some kind of backlog or not at all? Yes, we do, but we try to. So it's now actually growing, but we don't just put stuff in there. It's if we put things in there, it's because it's a technical debt, something that we need to do in the cooldown period. And we try to limit the things in the backlog to the epics and objectives that we have defined. I think every now and again we go and do a cleanup and remove things that at some point they seem to be about to happen and they didn't. But this goes back to the idea of not generating too many stories before you actually know you're going to work on it, because it's a waste of time. We generate the story and then we go back and we have to delete it or clean it up or discuss if we need to clean it up or not. We try to limit the stories that we put in the backlog to the kind of just in time. I need to do it next time. But again, theory, in practice, we do have a backlog now that has grown after this is the 6th iteration. And inevitably some stuff has fallen through the cracks and is there, but it's not huge.
Since that was my question, I'm going to jump in.
Oh yeah.
Is this going to be your first cleanup of the backlog now? or do you like
Yes,
do it regularly still?
I think we haven't done it yet. I'm not sure if we're going to do it, but I think now there is too many things there, I think. And I would need to check. It's not a disturbing thing, so it doesn't really bother me. And I think the team, but I think it's time to go and do a bit of cleanup. But it's not a scheduled thing, because I think this is the first, at this point, after 5 iterations, we're starting to see the need. But 5 iterations is a long time.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I think it's still an improvement.
Yeah, definitely. But so since you said it's also stuff kind of to keep track of for Cooldown, when you go into Cooldown,
Yes.
do people, are they told to first pick like the highest priority items off the backlog, or how does that work?
No. No. As we just use labels to identify the things that we're doing, like if it's a normal work or if it's something that we want to do for the cooldown period. No, and if it's probably something that is left over for last time that you didn't finish or you wanted to do something else, and probably it's time to delete it because you're not going to do it. And you probably have a new cool project that you want to work on.
Yeah, makes sense. All right.
How do you keep track of your day-to-day tasks? Do you still use Jira, Trello? How do you track progress? We still use Jira. So, for example, if we work on the upgrade of a cluster, that's the objective, and or the key result, the cluster is updated to blah. And then the first day of the iteration, the pod has a meeting. What is the next thing that we're going to do? Are we all going to do one thing and we pair program on it? Or do we think that we should split the work in some way? And then we generate a very limited amount of tickets, like probably 1 per person, if that's the maximum, because and then we just track the work on that ticket. And we tend to have, once that is done, or maybe just before it's about to be completed, we generate what is the next step that we're going to do. It's kind of, we evaluate at this point, we are going to finish the current work. What is the next step? So we only generate when we are sure that we're actually going to do that, what makes sense. And it also helps us having a conversation at that point. We finished this piece of work, considering what we have now, where we are, what is the next piece that makes sense to work on? But we still use Jira, yes.
I'm going to take off I think, because you talked about this one, I'm just going to take it off.
Yep.
If there are leftover questions, just interrupt me, jump in on the Zoom call. All right.
Did you consider using Basecamp as a tool to maintain your shape up-ish flow? Yes, at some point, I think, but it's kind of, we're not really, that is not something that has come up as a pain. So the tool we're using doesn't work. But also I do understand, and I agree that if we don't try, we don't really know what we're missing. But we haven't at the time. But we consider that. We consider that maybe this tool is built very well for this use, but that would introduce another set of problems, because at that point we would diverge also in the way that other teams can have visibility in what we're doing. So it's, yes, but it can be a multi-layered problem then we're diverging even in one other thing. So then we have to keep stuff in sync or find other ways that people can see what we're working on. And I think it wasn't worth the time, probably. But it's in our mind. It's something that we could consider.
Respecting your time, Simone, let's do like 3, 4, 5 more questions, tops. I hope that's okay for everybody. So if you, in the pool of questions, if there are any ones that you want to see answered, now's the time, I think, to upvote them, I guess. Yeah.
Do you use the concept of appetite as a time box, or
sorry, that was my bad. Please answer it anyways. Like, do you use the?
I think we don't use appetite. No, we don't use that concept. I'm trying to think of a way that fits in or is what we use. No, I can't see a parallel now. How does Shape Up for you fits the other practices like customer support and on-call rotation? It's tough because we get a ton of it. We get a lot of, we have widely adopted services. So there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of work that we put into sharing the knowledge, like having internal webinars, documentation. And we also get a ton of questions on Slack, and we get a fair amount of incidents. Fortunately, not many. It is disruptive because a lot of time is things that go over a certain amount of days. It's not something that ends very quickly. And we just accept it. It doesn't really fit into, and that's why I think we cannot be too strict on some choices. Sometimes the impact of support and on call is great on the iteration, and then we accept and we have to take into consideration. But it's tough because, for example, the circuit breaker, it's very difficult to accept that when there is a lot, sometimes the iteration is plagued with a lot of interruptions. But for example, improving that is one, it becomes an objective, for example. So to that extent, we use Jira extensively to track and add metadata to what we do, to actually find what is the right problem to solve now. What is the thing that has caused us the most support request, for example. We are not using hill charts. What are the key differences between OKRs and Shape Up from your point of view? What are you using OKR terminology talking about Shape Up? I think that the parallel that I make is that the way that you create the objectives, and that's the shaping part. And now that is about creating that. And the key result is giving the project, as in the team, empowering the team. That's how they fit together, in my mind, that the team is empowered to get the project and run with it and find a way to fix it, which also, in my mind, at least, aligns with the Inspired book. So that's how, in my mind, I think for our team, this all fits together in some way that makes sense. If you are aiming for shorter feedback cycles, 2-week sprints might sound more alluring than 6-week cycles. Did that come up as an objection? It's about being able to focus. So a lot of the work that we do, we found it very difficult to define 2 weeks of work that makes sense, and that it's a piece of work that is relevant and that is that provides value. We find that we fight that a lot, and I think 6 weeks, just like Shape Up says, it's the minimum amount it's enough time to build something meaningful. And without that, we just try to compress something meaningful or to chop it into multiple unmeaningful things that we want to do. And that's really not exciting or motivating for a team, I think. At least for us, that wasn't working. We just found it really hard to motivate, to come up with something that made sense. Also, larger initiatives, which for us are kind of the norm, are very difficult to tackle, because when you always want to get customer reward in 2 weeks, those things never get scheduled in, because it's very hard to chop it, and it's very hard to say, if we do this thing now and then we go back in like 4 sprints, we have forgotten everything. I mean, we basically have to start over. It's pointless, at least for us again.
Let's do last
engineers.
Yeah, I think let's do last question. If you want to pick any of these 3, feel free. And then do you have like 10 minutes to stick around after this? I think maybe we can just open up everything after this and have a chat with those people who want.
I don't know. Yes, the first one, we can decide to learn what we want. I think missionaries is we became that in a way. We really care. It's people that really care, and but also the people that don't want to be part of that, they can not be part of that. It's not you don't have to be in there. But it grew on us, and now I think it's just a mix of people that we have.
All right.
So far, no anxiety from the stakeholders. We explain where we're going, and we align to the global objectives. So in the big picture, we're still on the same line.
All right. Perfect. Thank you. I always find it hard to do like an applause on these things, but I'm gonna applaud you. Thank you so much for your time, Simone. And if any of you who are still around wanna speak up, wanna chat, I'm gonna just stick around for a few minutes. I might just end the live stream so